Hello, welcome back to another episode of Wealth with Joanne. I'm your host, Joanne. I'm so happy to be here on a rainy Monday morning. I've got the window open, it's thundering, it's raining, it's grey outside. I'm actually sitting quite in the dark here, but it's quite relaxing. I just realised it's very dark. I do have black curtains. I have one open, but the room is still quite dark because it's dark outside. But you know what? I'm liking it. I feel like it's very cozy. So, last week I wasn't here. I was on my doggy moon. We had an amazing time. We were away Monday till Friday. So I think I mentioned it in the last podcast, but we couldn't do our honeymoon because of, obvious things that are going on in the world. And we decided to still do something, still get out of Dubai and have a nice time and take the dogs, because the reason that we didn't want to travel was because we didn't want to leave the dogs behind, because if something had happened, I never would have forgiven myself, and we would have just been worried the whole time we were away anyway. So we took the dogs. They had an amazing time. They were playing with the big dogs. They went swimming. They slept all weekend when we got back, but yeah, it was so good. This is your sign. If you've ever wanted to go on holiday with your dogs, do it, because it's the best. Oh, there's the thunder. I don't know if the mic will pick it up. So today, I know the past couple of weeks I've spoken about anxiety. Let me know how you felt about those episodes. Let me know how you are. You can reach out to me, joanne_wealth@gmail.com, or on my socials, joanne_wealth on Instagram. And of course, you can find me on YouTube, Joanne Wealth, where you can listen to the podcast. So let me know how you're feeling, what's going on, anything that you want to hear from me, because this week's a little bit different. Because I'm actually going to deep dive into something that I've been exploring for the last few months, or somebody and their thoughts for the last few months. And I guess this has come from me, my feelings, my thoughts, and my own spiritual wellness journey over the past few years. And I guess I could ask you the same question, whether or not you've always felt that something feels off, but you can't explain it. Like things that you see in the news, the conflicting information that we have, the left versus right, feeling like you're pulled in different directions, the governments being governments, the control. Think of after 9/11 and COVID and how life has changed since then. And the way that these major events happen, and then they always seem to get their way, there's a big shift, something changes, we're more controlled. And I feel that that's something that has been on my mind for a long time. I don't know if you've ever seen The Truman Show, but I watched The Truman Show and thought that this could be a true story. I feel like this is, and it's always like The Truman Show is kind of always in the back of my mind. Like I do often look like at the sky and think, is this real? Like, or are we in just like a big dome? And the synchronicities, and when you see people or you think you recognize someone from somewhere else because of The Truman Show, I'm like, are they real? Are they just an actor and they're playing a different part because they look like somebody else? And this is something that's always been in the back of my mind. And humans are pattern seeking. And when things don't make sense, we do look for deeper explanations. And that doesn't go for everybody, because some of us are quite happy to just go along with the status quo and not question anything, not really go against the grain. And then you've got people like me, and I'm guessing if you're listening to the podcast, people like you, where things don't make sense. We don't agree with things. We want to question things. We feel like we are restricted in what we can do, say, and think because of these powers that be. So we go look for deeper explanations. And I think this is where David Icke, yes, that's who I'm talking about today, and his book, The Biggest Secret, really lands powerfully.
I'm just jumping on. I know it's only been 4 minutes in, but as I'm editing, I've just realised that at this point, my microphone actually turned off. So it defaulted to the camera mic. I've edited it as much as I can so that it doesn't sound too distant, too quiet, but I hope you can stay, and yeah, please like and subscribe.
So I started my David Icke journey just before Christmas because I knew who he was. I'd seen him, obviously, podcasts,
talks online. So I was very aware of who he was, what he thought, what his, way of thinking was, but I wasn't quite ready to dive deeper. I wasn't ready to learn. And I think you have to get to that point where you've read other things, you've dived deep, but you have to be ready to go this deep. You really do. Because it really does, and this is why it's so controversial, it goes against a lot of other things that we're told to believe. Religion, spirituality, just general life, everything. And I think if you're not ready for that, but you do have an interest in it, you have to get to that point. I hope that makes sense. So I was at the point where I was like, right, okay, I've looked into X, Y, Z. I still feel like there's something. I need to learn more. The world doesn't seem to me, especially since 2020, the whole COVID thing, just doesn't seem real, or the real that they're telling us. And I think this is why I was drawn to then start to reading. So I did read another book before I went into David Icke. Something kept popping up on my Instagram. It's David Icke and somebody else. I was like, right, I need to read this. And it was a book called, oh my God, what was it now? Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. So it was speaking about great resets, other civilizations, why we've been lied to about our history. And I was like, this makes sense. This makes more sense than what I was taught about at school. So then I decided to go a little bit deeper, because then, of course, I read that and David Icke started popping up on my Kindle. I was like, right, now is the time. And when you're listening today, I'm not asking you to agree with everything, because some of the things still, when I'm reading David's books, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. I'm not sure. And again, we're going to dive deep into this together. So it's not about agreeing with everything, because I don't think either that we do have to agree with everything. I feel like we live in a world now where if you don't agree with somebody, then you're wrong, and there's no conversation anymore. There's no backwards and forwards. There's no, oh my God, that's a bit of a crazy idea, but what about this? It's either black or white. There's no grey. So I want you to be grey today. I want you to listen and see where you can apply with your own thoughts, because some of the things you can take with a pinch. And if you don't agree with what David says, you can sort of think, okay, I don't agree with that, but this is my perspective, and it takes elements of what David is saying. And I want you to also think about why understanding his perspective really resonates with what's going on in the world now. Because the book that we're talking about today, The Biggest Secret, was written, I think 30 years ago. I've got it written down, I'll get to that. And a lot of it is like reading the news now. So has he predicted? Did he just know? We're going to talk about it, because it's there in black and white, and it's been there for years and years, and it's come true. So we can't argue with that, which is what made my head turn. So before we get into that, who is David Icke? If you're thinking, got no idea who you're talking about, you've mentioned his name. So he was born in Leicester in 1952, and in the 70s, he was a professional footballer. In the 80s, he was a BBC Sports presenter, which gave him mainstream credibility. So he was on the TV, people knew him, people listened to him, people respected him. Then in the 90s, there was a shift. Ooh, the thunder just in time then. So he claims in the early 90s that he had a spiritual awakening, psychic readings, energy experiences, things changed. He started to see things, feel things. And again, you might be listening to this and resonate, because this is where I sort of dropped in as well, that you see things, you feel things, when you meditate, you look at the world differently, you start to question. And he started to get downloads. And again, I've spoken about downloads in old episodes. This is your intuition. This is things that come to you and you're like, where did that just come from? And it feels good in the body. It's your intuition. You feel it in your intuition. You feel it in your gut, and you know that you're onto something. So then 1991, if you know of David Icke, you will have seen the famous Rogan interview where he was mocked on TV publicly. And overnight, he became a laughingstock. His reputation collapsed, and a lot of people were ridiculing him, saying he was going through some manic episode. Now, most people would have disappeared after that, but instead,
He doubled down. He continued researching, writing, speaking, getting more evidence for what he was saying. He didn't just, run off into the shadows and allow himself, cancellation didn't exist back then, but the modern version of being cancelled. He didn't come out and apologise and say he was seeking help. He carried on. And I think this is why I've got a respect for him. And this carrying on is 20 plus books, lectures over the years, some of them lasting up to 10 hours and growing a global audience. He was allowed back on YouTube a few months ago and he already has, I think, nearly 1 million followers and 1 million subscribers. I'm sure he has. So for me, this shows this consistency over 30 years. Whether he's right or wrong, he's not changed his core message. And that really resonates, that stands with me. Like I said, he hasn't gone back on himself. That level of conviction is either delusion or it's something he really truly believes is real. And for me, I'm going with the latter because I've read his books. So if you don't want to read his books, you can just listen to this podcast anyway. If not, I urge you to start with The Biggest Secret. So The Biggest Secret was written in 1999. This is important. This is the same year as The Matrix. This is when there was a big cultural movement questioning reality. Now, again, bearing in mind this was written in 1999, when you're reading this book, it could have been written last week. Some of the things he says in there have happened. And I had to keep reminding myself that this is not a book that was written after events. This was a book written before the events. This was something that was written before most of the truth that we have now. Some big thunder. I hope you can hear it. I'll check when I'm editing. I'm going to leave it in. It's still rumbling. So in 1999, at the time, there was no smartphones, there's no social media, limited public awareness of the things we know now, data tracking, surveillance. We didn't know any. Did we even know the world algorithm? Did we? We didn't have things listening to us when we were talking and showing us adverts. We didn't look at things online and then it just kept getting shown to us and shown to us. We didn't have any of this. It was a simpler time. What people did have then, and this again is very important, was the news, the TV news, what we call the mainstream media now. People trusted in that. The BBC, which is nowadays up for question in everything that they do, was the trusted. If something was going on, people in Britain would go to the BBC because they were the ones that they trusted. They trusted the newspapers, they trusted the government, and they trusted the institutions around the world more than they do today. So think about if COVID was in the late 90s, we would have only had access to the BBC. So everything that they were saying was gospel. However, we had COVID in 2020, and we were able to go online and see that people were throwing back and disagreeing and questioning. That wouldn't have happened in the 90s. However, that is what David was doing in the 90s when he was coming out and talking. But because it was just him and it wasn't the thing to do back then, this is why he was ridiculed. He was talking back then things that we're trying to escape from now: hidden control, manipulated perception, global power networks. This is stuff that we are talking about now, that we are going through right now, that 30 years ago, he was saying, this is coming, you all need to listen. So the core idea of The Biggest Secret is the prison you can't see. And take a quote from the book: we are born into a prison we can't see. What does that even mean? First of all, there's a few layers, the psychological layer, that obviously when we're born, our beliefs are then shaped from childhood. There's this cultural conditioning. There's this is how the world is. So we're born, we take our beliefs from our parents, whether that's religious, cultural, traditional, where you're born, what's going on. This is just how the world is where you are born, and this is how you're meant to act.
this is where you're going to go in life, this is what you need to do, and everything is sort of laid out for us. Psychologically, we're not going to question that because that is what we're told. We kind of live in this little box, and everything's laid out for us, and then, you know, we keep going until we die. The second layer is the information. So everything that you see is curated. So the news, social media, education systems. So he goes into detail about these things. So when we watch the news and we think we're watching them, giving us the information that we need, the truth that we need in whatever situation. However, that is not the case. We are given the information that they want us to see, that they want us to learn, that they don't want us to question. We're not being told the truth. The same as in our social media, the same as in our schools. Schools are more of an indoctrination that we're told the history that they want us to know. Our brains are filled with things that we're never going to really need, so that we don't ask questions about the things that we're not sure of. And the world then splits off into, or people split off into these NPCs, non-playable characters, that imagine that we're the Sims that just get on. They're told this information, they're happy to get on with their life, they work, retire, they tick all the boxes, and that's their life. We then get the people like you and I, who maybe we've all started that way. We've gone to university, we've done the schooling, you know, we've had the indoctrination, but we've thought this is not it. There's more to it than this. And this is what he also goes into. The third layer. So again, we just go through those layers again. So I said that really quickly. The psychological, that we're told what to believe from childhood. Informational, we're told what they want us to tell. They being the elites, the cult above us. The third layer that the book goes into is perceptual. So the brain filters our reality. We don't and can't see everything, and we've only been primed to see a certain amount of things. So David talks about us only being able to see 0.005 of the frequencies around us. And we are limited to our 5 senses. So what we can see, smell, taste, touch, feel, hear, anything else, if it's there, we're not going to believe it, or we don't have access to it. So we're only, for example, we know that Wi-Fi is there, but we think it's invisible. It's not, it's a frequency. We just can't tune into that frequency with our human eyes. Everything else, the data, everything that's all around us all of the time, but we can't see it because it's out of our scope. So he talks about that this is just exactly what they want us to see. Now, we do know that other people can see through these other dimensions. So we're in the 3D world. We've got the 4D and the 5D. When you go and see a psychic, or people can see, hear things from other dimensions, the dead, whatever you call it, they're just tapping into those other frequencies, which we are all able to do. We've just been held back from that. So the prison that he talks about is not a prison, it's a metaphor. It's not a prison as such. It's not 4 walls. It exists through our beliefs. It exists through repetition. Things repeat, walls repeat. If we go back and research and go through, what's happened in the world over X amount of years, there's a pattern. We're also in this prison through emotional conditioning. We're told not to ask questions. And again, we kind of just get along with it. Most people do, or used to. People are starting to ask more questions. He then talks about the hidden power structures. And I've taken this quote here: the few who manipulate the many do so by controlling perception. Now, Icke suggests that power is not fragmented. So we've got our governments, we've got schools, we've got politics, banking, the media, all of these entities that we have in power, that we see them as separate, they're fragments. Now, he suggests that everything is interconnected,
And this is what really resonates with me, because there's a small number of families, corporations that own everything. Their fingers are in banking, their fingers are in the politics, their fingers are in the media, the fingers are in the corporations. So I'm going to give an example, even just the BBC. So the BBC is obviously media. It's a huge corporation in the UK. They are governed, they are controlled by the royal family, the government. So when there's a big story, the BBC will then have to go through the channels to whether or not the public get to see that story, whether or not it needs to be secret from the public, or what do the public need to know about this. The BBC are then also funded by, obviously it's through the taxpayer. The BBC are a huge corporation, and the people at the top of the BBC are also then top dogs in other corporations. They are the bankers, the politicians, the media, the corporations. So it's not just John next door who works at the BBC. There are people, that work there that are oblivious to what's going on. I'm talking about the very top chain. Everything is connected. Think about Big Pharma, fast food. We know they're connected now. We know that the people who own Big Pharma, that want people sick, are the same people that are feeding the public. So let's feed the public crap. Let's put all of this stuff in their food, let's poison them, make them sick, and then we get money from when they're sick. It's all connected. And when it comes to the public knowing this, we have to dive deeper, because it is just a small number of corporations that own vast media networks. They're not separate, they're all interconnected. So the men, women within the governments have their fingers in the main TV channels. So again, I can speak from Britain, BBC, Channel 4, ITV, those main channels that we've all grown up on and relied on are government owned. And whatever the government wants to feed into us then feeds in through those channels, those TV channels. So over the past few years, the government have wanted to push this transgender narrative and the gender and people questioning. There's a reason behind that, because once they separate us from ourselves, from who we really are, taking away identities, cultures, then we're easier to control. So he really dives deep into this and shows us just how much information that we're given, that is, the information's controlled to therefore control us and make us think a certain way. And it works. Look at in the UK now, like I watch the news and it's so split, left versus right. And you've got people on the left that have been indoctrinated through universities, that, they're protesting against things that they've got no real life examples about to protest. But then you've got the other side, the working class, who are then being fed other bits. I don't want to go too much into this because that's not what we're talking about today. But they're given other bits of information. They're watching other things happen, things that dropped in their community. And we've got this divide. It is divide and conquer. The people at the top want to divide and conquer. We've also got the wealth concentration. There is an increasing gap between the top 1% and the rest of us. Now, interestingly, it didn't talk about this in The Biggest Secret. David talks about this in the newest book that I'm reading, and it's really stuck with me. If you can see the end picture, so the end goal is, if you think about the Hunger Games, that you've got the capital, you've got the rich at the top, you've got the military in charge, and then you've got the people at the bottom. And then the people at the bottom, depending on how they bow down to the rules, depends on how much they get in their lives. Basically a little bit how it is in China. So they have their digital ID, and if they do something good, they get more points and they can go and buy the expensive bread from the supermarket.
if they're caught doing anything that might be seen anti-government, then they lose their points and they could be trying to pay for their bread in the supermarket and they don't have enough money. That is what the end goal is, that we're so reliant on the top 1%. Now how this works, which is really important, again, is not through force. We're not being forced to watch the TV. If you think about everything that I've just said, the news, the things that we watch, the little subliminal messages and the things that we watch, we're forced to think like this through information control, through the way that they shape the narrative, through repetition. So think about even the adverts in the UK are so dystopian. They rarely show a 2.4 family. They're always a multicultural family. And I can see this coming because I don't watch the TV. Obviously, I don't have the UK TV. So when I go home, I'm like, what is going on? There is so much promotion of dysfunctional, broken families that then we see that, you're watching that, and this becomes the norm. And this repetition, so then we stop thinking that this is the best way to live, our way that we used to live, the old status quo, and we start to think that now this is okay. Now, part of the control is breaking up the family, and what they are promoting is broken families. And I think that people really don't need to be forced once they believe that something is true. So the more that you see something, the more that you're exposed to something, the more that you're going to believe it. And this is where then the left versus right comes into this as well. We've also got perception versus reality. David writes, humanity is being controlled by controlling perception. In this day and age, we know that through our algorithms. Our algorithms decide what we see, what we don't see, the algorithms decide what we see and what we don't see. I wrote this down and I was like, does that make sense? Yes, it does. So it shows us based on what we watch. So my feed will be completely different to your feed. We can live in two completely different realities online, depending on what we've clicked on previously. So on my feed, for example, when I watch things that happen in the UK is dystopian. The UK is not the UK that I left. England is being trampled down. England is not going to exist within the next few years. But then on somebody else's feed, it's going to be the complete opposite. Because I've watched those videos because I'm interested and I'm worried about what the possibility of what could happen. So therefore, my perception is then being controlled. Now, I'm not there, so I can't see. And I know this is happening. I see people commenting, England has fallen, England doesn't exist. But then you speak to somebody else who's got a different perception because this is just what we're being shown online and it's not the actual reality. We've also then got the psychological here. We've got the confirmation bias. Like I've just said, the algorithm then shows us things to reinforce our beliefs. It emotionally amplifies and fear-based content spread faster. So when we are online, when we are seeing the news, a lot of it is based on fear. Now, what David also talks about is these elites, this cult that is above us that feed on our fear. Low vibration. Everything is vibration. Everything is energy. So when we are all day to day just getting on with our lives and absorbing all of this fear, all of this negativity, the ones above us are feeding off that. Think about the wars. Think about the leaders. When are our leaders ever just happily getting on with life and everything is normal? There's always fear. They want us to live in fear. They absorb this low vibrational energy. And I really do believe that because it's the high vibrational people like David that they want to shut down. They don't want people to know the truth because when people know the truth, they will vibrate higher.
And I think that our reality based on that is increasingly personalized. So if they know that they're feeding into your fear, that's what you're going to get more of. The algorithm is going to show you that. And I really believe that we've been given access to information that through smartphones, we've got all of this technology. I think that this has been slowly given out to us over the years to have this effect. We think the people in charge are our prime ministers, presidents. There are people above them. And this is where David goes a little bit deeper into who those people above are and what they actually are. I'm going to go into that a little bit later. Now, this is the part that I questioned when I first started to read David. But when we go through all of this first and we understand what we're being told and why, you can then sort of see that, actually, maybe the guy is not actually that crazy. And obviously, when I'm reading this, I'm also thinking about my nervous system and how my nervous system does feel better after reading David Icke, because I can see that what I'm being shown now is being fed to me to try and make me scared, to try and feed off my fear. So now I'm able to see that actually this might not be the truth. This is all a big game. This is just a show. And I understand that what we're being shown has been picked out for us. And it has really helped, because I'm like, I know what's going on here, and I can understand it more than taking it as gospel. And going back to fear as vibration. So the fear being used as a tool for control. So fear is a vibration that allows control. Remember that. Remember that next time you're watching the news and you start to feel scared. That is what they want. When we are living in fear, we can be controlled. Now, the biological response, when we're watching the news, and I spoke about this last week, or, things are happening, we're getting, nervous system's getting triggered. So fear activates the amygdala, that is your threat detection. And it suppresses the prefrontal cortex. This is our logic, our reasoning. So when we're living in fear, our logic is turned down. So for me, when I've been reading these David Icke books, I've turned my logic back up and I've been able to turn my threat detection down. Now, what happens as a whole when people are living in fear? They react faster. They're out protesting. They're fighting. It's civil war. There's reduced critical thinking. There's increased compliance. We do what we're told. Think back to COVID. We were scared. We were fed all of that information. People are dying every single day. This is how many people have died today. We then we need them to help us. We want the powers above us to help us because we're scared. We start to comply. We stay 6 feet away. We read masks. Oh, sorry, we don't read masks. We wear masks. We're constantly feeding our own fear, keeping up on the news. When we have this repeated exposure to fear, it keeps our body in chronic stress. And this is, again, we go to seek certainty, authority, safety. We want those people above us, air quotations, to help us. Now, from the book, what I've taken that even if fear isn't intentionally created, the effect is predictable and measurable. So they know if they scare us into doing things, we're going to do it because we want protection. And again, go back. The news spirals your anxiety. You've then got the inability to think clearly. Think during COVID, you're watching the news, it's on constantly, it's everywhere. We can't think clearly, we go and get the vaccine. Now, let's go a little bit deeper. So we've spoken about the psychological, we've spoken about the fear, we've spoken about how we're being controlled through the media. This is where David, I think, lost people, but now he's bringing them back. The reptilians, the bloodline theory. Now, remember, this is just a theory. Take from this, I'm going to give you my angle as we go, but I think he's onto something here. I take from this that we are governed by 13 families who I'll go in. I don't want to give too much away. I'll give my thoughts as we go. So David says the bloodlines have the knowledge and the power. So what David claims is these certain elite families, gosh, I can't read my writing. These certain elite families carry power across generations. We know that, true. Let's just use the British royal family as an example. You're born into the British royal family, you have power, and that's gone on for generations. He also claims that these bloodlines are influenced by non-human entities. So the bloodlines that we see are the humans, but above them, the thunder again, just on time. The bloodlines above, the people above them, the things above them, are non-human. He calls them the reptilians. Now, for me, since I'm reading his newer book, this is making more sense. Now, if it makes it easier for you to understand the reptilians, just think of, if you're calling someone a lizard, the cold, the heartless, no one wants to be called a lizard. So we've got the energy of a reptilian. They want control. So if that helps, have that in your mind. So the bloodlines are influenced by the non-human entities. History shows that power stays within these elite families. And now we know that within these elite families, people who they choose, think about the royal family, think about the person that's in the news a lot lately, Epstein, he was part of the crew there. We have this power, and anyone associated with the elite families also has this power. The influence is inherited. So the wealth, connections, they've got access to everything. It all depends on where you're born. This is the bloodline. There's ancient texts go back that talk about these bloodlines, gods interacting with humans, hybrid beings. So we're talking thousands of years ago. It's in the Bible, the Book of Enoch. They talk about these people coming down, whatever you want to call them. But the way that I understand it is these beings interacted, created then this human race, and then they've got their elites, the elites that we see, who are in charge, who are controlling. They control everything, these big 13 families. So I take it more of a symbol rather than a literal reptilian. If that makes so, literally, they're not literally reptilians, but there's an influence coming from somewhere. Not very nice people. And symbolically, they inherited this power structure. Now, you don't have to accept this literal idea to question how power is passed down. We know that power is passed down. We know that the British royal family has its fingers in lots of pies. We know that whoever's born into that royal family inherits that power. I'm not going to go into it today, but you can read for yourself in the book. He then also does talk about these rituals and things that these families do, which is very relevant now because we're hearing about it with these Epstein files. So again, I urge you to go and have a look at that because we know this. We know it. We know that these elite families, every single country has their own elite family. We've got the presidents, the prime ministers, they're all picked. They're not just random people off the street. They have been picked for a reason because they have this connection. So let's talk about when the awakening, what's going on. When enough people awaken, this system will collapse. This is where we're at now. People are waking up and this system could possibly collapse. This is where I feel like I am at. I'm starting to see beyond official narratives. I've said for ages, and I think I probably say this every single podcast episode, I don't watch the news. Question everything. Everybody question everything. What's going on now? Why is there a war? What are we not being told? Why have they started this war? What don't they want us to see? A lot of the things that we see are a cover up for something else. Recognize this pattern. This is what we need to do as a collective. Whether you want to go deep into the reptilian theory or whether or not you just want to believe, which is, we've got the facts for this one, that these elite families just get passed down. They are in control of everything that we see. Recognize these patterns of control. Recognize that when they want something to happen, something big happens. When they want more security, an event like 9/11 happens. When they want to monitor where we're going and the control and security, and they want to keep us safe, in air quotes, we're more controlled. Safety doesn't mean more control. Think back to COVID. We're trying to keep you safe, so stay in your house. That is not safety, that is control. Recognize these patterns. Go back. We could go back to the world wars. We're trying to keep you safe, so you've got to stay in your houses. Were these wars genuine, what we've learned about in history, or were these wars used as a reset because life has not been the same since? A war breaks up the status quo. Today, we've got alternative media. We are lucky enough to be able to go online and listen to David Icke talk. We're lucky enough to question the media. We're lucky enough to have podcasts and me to share this information independently. And I also think that awakening isn't a panic or paranoia. For me, this awakening is an awareness, it's observation, it's an emotional regulation. I'm able to ask questions and get answers by reading books and not just seeing what's being told to me on the news. And this resonates with me more now, I think, because of the constant information, because of the contradictory narratives, because everyone has a low trust in these institutions globally. Everyone's asking questions. Why are they in charge? Why do they get to lead? What's going on? We don't trust like we used to. We don't look up to the royal family like we used to. We don't look up to the prime ministers and presidents like we used to. There's also this psychological effect. This uncertainty creates stress. But then what people are doing is going out and trying to create their own certainty, finding meaning and explanation. Hello, David Icke. This is why I was drawn to him. People know something is wrong, but they don't know what it is. Going back to the beginning, we've all had that feeling. This off feeling could be your intuition. It could be overwhelm. It could be both. So I invite you to go and explore that. Read the book. Go to David Icke's website. Take what you need. Leave what you don't. And just some of the things that he said, I'm going to quickly go over this. The early themes that he speaks about that are very relevant today, that again, we cannot deny that we live in a surveillance state. He spoke about this in the 90s. Then it seemed extreme when he was talking about it. Now we've got smartphones that track all of our behavior. Data collection is standard. There's a file somewhere on all of us out in the desert. Everything that we've ever clicked on online, everything that we've said, everything that we've sent, they've got all our information. When David spoke about this before, think about the novel 1984. That was seen as out there. We're literally living that now. The media influence, then it was questioned. Now we know. Lots of people don't watch the news anymore. Lots of people listen to podcasts instead and alternative media. The global power networks he spoke about in the 90s, then it was kind of like maybe. Now it's obvious. Now we know that they want a one world government. We've got the WEF, which is aiming for that. We know there's a global corporation. The World Health Organization during COVID, they didn't just let countries look after themselves. The World Health Organization took control of that. They are all one. All of these global, they're all together in this. He spoke about the fear cycles and the low vibration of fear. Then it was a theory. Now we can see it online and we'll know from the news that we've watched over the years and however long you've been alive. Has the news, when is the news, the happy stories left till last, isn't it? Do we need
Do we need the news? Do we need to sit down and watch the news at 10? Do we? They've got us conditioned to do that. Well, not anymore, I don't think, not as much, but that used to be back in the 90s. You'd watch the 6 o'clock news, the 10 o'clock news. And what I want you to do here is stay open. Being open-minded doesn't mean switching off your judgment. And I always try to avoid blind belief. I'm reading David's books, but I'm always thinking in the back of my mind, I'm not taking it with a pinch of salt, because when I'm reading it, I'm like, oh my God, this is gospel, to use the want of a better word, but I'm not taking it as religious. So I'm not taking it as, I'm worshipping and this is what I totally believe. I read it, I take what I need, I go about my day, and when things come up, I observe and see where it fits in. And I think for me, this all comes back to how you process it, how you're using this information to calm yourself, to learn. Can you take your dysregulated nervous system and find more clarity? Can you turn your nervous system into a more grounded thinking way? A grounded thinking way, does that make sense? What am I trying to say here? So when we're not calm and our nervous system is being reactive, we are more influenced by other things. Can you switch that for yourself? Can you have more grounded thinking based on looking into other areas and not just what you're seeing on the news? Can you stop watching the news and start to explore other avenues? Can you read David Icke and look at things from a different point of view and see where it resonates and see where it fits? And I think what I'll leave you with is that you don't need to solve all the problems in the world to feel safe in your body. Some people don't want to know anything, and that's okay. But for me, I like to have information. I like to learn. I like to read. I like to look at things and think about, where can I take this and what can I learn from it and how can this help me? I want to leave you with maybe just pondering on. So maybe the biggest secret isn't just what's hidden. Maybe it's about what we've been taught to see. Just think about that. Sometimes secrets are things that we can't see. But I think in this case, the secret is what we can see. The secret is what we're being shown. And it's the unknown that is what we really need to learn about. So stay aware, but stay regulated. Question more, but don't lose yourself in the process. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know if I've inspired you to go and look at David's information a little bit more closely. I've literally skimmed through. It's a massive book. So I've just taken his main points and tried to bring them so that you can reflect and learn and see where you can take this. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next episode.